The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Whatever the future of radio may be, I hope one thing that is never lost is the ability to react to breaking news. And that is one thing that we have here, certainly over podcasts, over newspapers such as they are, and even television, where it takes time to mobilize. We can shift in a second when news breaks. And I was able to react to the news, the very sad news, as we wrapped up the show on Friday, that Sonny Jurgensen had passed away at the age of 91. I had known that Sonny was ill, and I knew that at some point in the next weeks, months, I would be talking about his life. He passed away at the age of 91, lived a long life, an incredible life, and it should be celebrated. It's sad always when someone dies, but when you look back on his life, you look back with a smile on the many things that he did, not just on the field, but off the field, becoming a great broadcaster and many other things that he did in his life, raising a family. He had 4 sons and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, an incredible life. And I only had about 10 minutes to do it on Friday, and here we are on Monday, and sadly, he's not even the last member of the franchise to die. Barry Wilburn, who was a terrific cornerback for a few years with Washington, picked off John Elway twice in Super Bowl 22, found dead in a house fire in Memphis at the age of 62. And so, Sonny's death, while fresh and still for many of us, melancholy and wonderful thoughts and what we saw from him on the field, and in my fortunate case, getting to know him a little bit. Those are things that really would like to spend some time on, and I will. We're going to spend a lot of the show on it today. I know there's a Super Bowl to talk about and a few other things. Hey, Maryland got a road win yesterday, so there's some other stuff to deal with. But just the life that he had and what I have done in radio in my career. You can't time everything the way you want it to be timed out, and certainly, we'd love for Sonny to still be alive, of course. But if you have the news that he's passed away, you'd like to have the forum to react to it. And I just didn't have the amount of time that I would have wanted to have on Friday, and then the weekend came, and so here we are on Monday. But there are so many great stories that have come out. I was on a number of shows over the weekend talking about it, and my memories are just so fresh of him, playing. I mean, I don't know how many people who are still working in this business actually saw Sonny play the bulk of his career. I remember first time I saw him play, at least Washington career, 1966. He retired after the 74 season, so that's now 52 years. And one of the things that I thought about, too, was Sammy Baugh. Sammy Baugh, I think you could argue, was the greatest Washington quarterback ever. That's something that you can't settle, and Sonny would have told you that. In fact, one of the great thrills of Sonny's broadcasting career, he said it a number of times, was when George Michael sent him to Sammy Baugh's ranch to talk about football and talk about what the modern game was. This was probably 8 or 9 years before Baugh passed away. He died in 2008. He was 94 years old. Now think about this. Sammy Baugh last played a game for the Redskins in 1952. He died in 2008. That's 56 years. And almost nobody remembered him because what he did after he finished playing was coach for a little while in the AFL, and then he went to his ranch. We never saw him again, never heard from him again, except for rare occasions like when Sonny Jurgensen went down to interview him. It's just so much different with Sonny because he was in our presence for 60 years. Comes to Washington in 1964, plays until 74. He's a network broadcaster for a while, but then he's part of Sonny, Sam, and Frank starting in 1981 all the way through the 2019 season. He did television with the late, great Glenn Brenner, with the late, great George Michael. He was a presence in Washington as a broadcaster, and tied to, in some respects, his career. But his career had a lot of what-ifs in it. So I will get to that. There's lots to talk about with Sonny's career, and I've got some parts of an interview that he did with Andy Ockershausen. Andy Ockershausen was the general manager of WMAL when that was the kingpin station, especially for sports. There was no sports radio. So they had the Redskins. They had Maryland sports. I think at one time they may have even had the Caps. That was the station for sports. And then we came along with WTEM in 1992, and they kind of handed that off and became something else. But, full circle, I'm back here finishing my career on 630, the station that we initially had to compete with once we launched WTEM in 1992. So it's just really, I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm glad I have the time to talk about it today. But let's get to the Super Bowl. And I think one of the great things that NFL Films does is they use the local radio broadcasts for narration. So, for example, if you're watching the Super Bowl highlights of 17 and you see the John Riggins 43-yard touchdown run on 4th and 1 when he sheds Don McNeil, you hear the great call from Frank Herzog. When Doug Williams is raining touchdown passes on the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 22, you are hearing the great call of Frank Herzog. And so this will stand the test of time. To be honest with you, I think it could have been a stronger call, but the game was so boring yesterday that I really don't fault Steve Rabel, who's the voice of the Seahawks, for what I think was, kind of a blasé call. I'm not going to, jump all over him, but I just think that, when you win a Super Bowl championship, and it's harder to do when you don't have a last-second play, a last-second touchdown, field goal, whatever you want to call it. But this was Rabel on KIRO as the Seahawks wrapped up their second Super Bowl championship.
3, 2, 1, the Seahawks! They're bringing it home again for the second time in less than 12 years. The Seahawks win Super Bowl 60. They are bringing the Lombardi at Levi Stadium and in Seattle, and it won't stop for days.
Well, we'll find out about that. Haven't heard anything about a parade. My son is a teacher in Seattle, and I texted him last night. I said, do you think they'll let the kids out of school for a parade? He said he didn't know. They had a day, I guess a teacher's day on Friday anyway, so it might not matter. I think these parades usually happen pretty quickly, so it could happen tomorrow, could happen Wednesday, and there will be a grand celebration in Seattle. It's been a little while since it's happened, not as long as it's been here, but it's been, I think, 12 years since they won the last one. Let me look at the stats here for a second. You can't tell everything from statistics. A completely lopsided game. Even the final score, 29-12, doesn't give you any indication as to how dominant Seattle was and how inept New England was. Surprised me. Time of possession, Seattle held the ball for only. Part of the reason he did that was his defense was so god-awful that he didn't want to put him back on the field. Well, Seattle's defense was so good that they played it safe. This is not a very attractive-looking stat here. On third down, Seattle went 4 for 16. Well, there you go. Well, 4 for 16, that's not good. New England was even better. It was better, 6 for 15. But Seattle was not going to take any chances with the ball. And you had Jason Myers setting a Super Bowl record with 5 field goals. We just say, well, geez, why were they so punchless in the red zone? They were because they weren't going to take any chances. The defense was so good, and they knew that they had bottled up Drake May, that there was no reason to take any chances. Just keep kicking field goals, keep making stops, running the football, and yes, they get the MVP of the game, who becomes the first running back, Kenneth Walker, first running back since Terrell Davis in 1998 to be the Super Bowl MVP. 27 carries. How many times do you see a running back these days with 27 carries? 27 carries, 135 yards, also caught a couple of passes for 26 yards. They were just going to run the ball, punt it, stop them, turn it over, which they did. They turned over Drake May 3 times, twice on interceptions, once on a fumble. And they turned those into field goals, and there was one touchdown. A.J. Barner, tight end, caught a touchdown pass. That was it. And that was the game plan there, and it worked perfectly. There's an amazing stat here that they had their punt returner, Rashad Saheed, punt returner for Seattle, 6 fair catches. 6 fair catches. That's Mike McDonald saying, hey, don't be a hero here. Don't try and break one off and fumble the football. Just get us the possession, and we're going to take care of it, which led to, frankly, a very boring Super Bowl. The only fun I can find out of it is the local aspect, and it comes from the losing team. Mac Hollins, whose older brother played basketball with my son at Wooten, and Mac Hollins was a good football player at Wooten, and I believe one year he quit the team because he didn't like the coach. He went to prep school for a year. Really shined. He's big, fast, smart. Those things have all helped him. He went to prep school. He winds up walking on at North Carolina. 4th-round pick of the Eagles, wins the Super Bowl with them. Has been sort of an NFL nomad, but I think he provided, and I'm gonna maybe I get an argument on this. He provided the second greatest moment for a Montgomery County high school athlete, not some kid from Montgomery County who goes to like DeMatha or Gonzaga. But he played his high school career at Wooten. He didn't go to one of the private schools. I'm sure he could have if he wanted to. But he stayed at Wooten, went to the prep school, then goes to North Carolina, has been in the NFL. Matt Collins caught 4 passes for 78 yards, including a touchdown. It's touchdown in a blowout loss, but it's a touchdown. And I look at what Mac did, and I would have to go back to what Mike Curtis did to find something comparable. Mike Curtis, many, many, many years ago, back in the 60s, was a great player at Richard Montgomery. He was part of the Colts Super Bowl team in 1971, the one that beat Dallas 16-13. That was an ugly Super Bowl, too. And as a matter of fact, Chuck Howley from the losing Cowboys was the MVP because I guess in those days the votes had to be in early. But Mike Curtis had an interception in this game and led the Colts in tackles with 4. So you match those up, take what you want. But for me, who actually was, I wouldn't call myself an athlete, but I was a participant in football at BCC, it's kind of a cool thing for me. So hats off to Mac Hollins for that. I guess there's that, but his team really was never in the game. Let's get some more reaction. This was the trophy ceremony. Oh, some history here. Maria Taylor became the first woman to host the Lombardi Trophy presentation. And, of course, after interviewing the coach, she turned it over to, he was not the MVP. Most times, I'd say more often than not, the quarterback is the MVP. But in this case, Darnold was not. Kenneth Walker was, and by the way, becomes a free agent. Ching, ching, ching. Maria Taylor with Sam Darnold.
Sam, I think you just completed one of the greatest redemption stories we've ever seen in football. Your 5th team in 8 seasons. What gave you the belief, the will, to know that you could stand up here on this stage holding this trophy?
It's easy. My teammates and my coaches. They've believed in me ever since the beginning of OTA's training camp, and that was our mindset. Every single day we came to work, and hey, I got to shout out our offensive line, our tight ends, our receivers, and of course the running backs for everything that they did tonight. It was special in the run game. But our defense, man, hey, 12s, make some noise for our defense.
Hey, listen, with all the ups and downs that come from a season, when you saw the confetti coming down, first thing that went through your mind?
We did it. That was it, man. It's been such a special journey with these guys. So much hard work that's been poured into this, and that's it. It was just a job well done.
Yeah. Here's a cool moment too in the post game when they all have their tables set up on the field, the different networks. And so ESPN was there. And Alex Smith, who I think is a rising star, if I were CBS, and maybe this is already in the works, I would be talking to Alex Smith's agent to have him replace Matt Ryan, who's gone on to become the president of the Atlanta Falcons. He is that good. And this was a really cool moment where you can hear the understanding that a former quarterback had. I remember Alex Smith was the number one pick of the draft. And there were times when people thought he was a bust too, and had, kind of a career resurgence with Kansas City. And who knows what would have happened here had he not broken his leg. He might have had some really good seasons here. And he looks at Sam Darnold, and in some ways he sees himself, because Sam Darnold was on the way to Busville, number 3 pick of the draft, washed out with the Jets, washed out with Carolina, was a backup in San Francisco, did resurge in Minnesota, but flamed out at the end. And they got him. They got him on a bargain contract for what he provides. This is a quarterback making $33 million a year. Remember this, that Geno Smith was offered an extension in Seattle when Mike McDonald got there. He didn't agree to it. They said, fine. They traded him to the Raiders so he could reunite with Pete Carroll. They bring in Sam Darnold for $33 million. And remember, you got quarterbacks in the league like Dak Prescott making $60 million. And he delivers a Super Bowl. And there's Alex Smith as part of the post-game show on ESPN looking at Sam Darnold and in probably some ways saying, that could be me. Listen to this exchange.
I'm trying to put this in perspective myself for you, right? Like, again, I feel like I have so much empathy. And you've heard it a bunch leading up to the Super Bowl. Again, right, like your journey, the top pick, traded, benched. You were at the Super Bowl as a backup 2 years ago. All you've done is win 31 games, right? Obviously, Minnesota, we know what happened there. To actually be here sitting in this chair, you're wearing the shirt, you got the hat on, you just looked at yourself in the Lombardi, man. Like, what is going on? What's going on right now? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm not usually a crier or an emotional person.
Go for it.
No, I'm not going to cry right now, Boom. But man, like, just to be able to share a moment just now, like 5 minutes ago with my parents and Katie, my fiance. Like, my parents, they believed in me. They believed in me from when I was a child playing this game. I would make mistakes. I would make mistakes off the field too. They know it. And they would teach me lessons and all these things throughout life, and they just believed in me, throughout my entire career. And I credit them to why I'm still here, why I'm still chasing this dream, because they always believed in me, and it allowed me to believe in myself.
Yeah, wasn't that great? That was tremendous. And as a parent and as a grandparent now, I think that's I know I benefited from my parents' support. I hope that my kids benefited from mine, and their kids will benefit from them, and in an indirect way from me. So that's really nice. Now, this was Mike McDonald, and he's not looking at Sam Darnold as this great, Rocky story. He's saying, and this is an interesting way to look at this. This was in the postgame news conference. He's saying, Let's turn the page here. Let's stop talking about Sam Darnold in terms of, wow, isn't this amazing? We should be talking about Sam Darnold, the now franchise quarterback who's won a Super Bowl.
They have tried to put a story and a label on who he is as a person, who he is as a quarterback. He does not care, okay? He just is the same guy every day since he shows up. He's so steadfast. He's a great teammate. His teammates love him. All he's done since he's walked in the door has just been a tremendous player on our football team and a tremendous leader who is the same guy every day. And that's who he is. And that's how we need to talk about him moving forward.
Yeah, so I guess when they get to training camp or even mini camp, they'll say, hey, what a redemption. No, stop already. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's won a Super Bowl before Josh Allen, who was in his same draft class. Turn the page, move on. Let's talk about Sam Darnold. And, boy, they got themselves a bargain. He did get $1 million bonus for winning the Super Bowl last night, which is, buckets. You got to think back to Joe Theismann trying to fire up his team before the Super Bowl in 1983 when he says, it's worth $70,000 in a big effing ring. The ring is still important. The $70,000 Tip money. And by the way, for that Super Bowl, that was the strike year, and part of the strike settlement was they doubled the money for winning the Super Bowl. It'd been $35,000 the year before. $70,000 in 1983 meant something, meant some money. Now, I think the money for each player is not that much difference. Probably in that range. I bet it's less than $100,000 a player. For Sam Darnold, contract bonus of $1 million. Pretty damn good. All right, coming up, we'll get to more on Sonny Jurgensen, the life and times. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
There have been a number of great tributes to Sonny Jurgensen since the news came that he had passed away on Friday at the age of 91. Kind of ironic, and it ties so much into Vince Lombardi, who the anniversary of Lombardi coming to Washington was the 57th on Friday. Came to Washington in 1969, February 6th, and Sonny passes on that day. And we'll get to what he said about Lombardi and the influence that he had on his life. And I think it ties into Sonny being, in many ways, a what-if story. He's the most beloved, I think, the most beloved athlete in the history of Washington, yet he never started a playoff game. He doesn't have a Stanley Cup like Alex Ovechkin. He didn't win a World Series championship like Ryan Zimmerman. They were beloved. Ovi still is, but he was not on a winning team here, except like a couple of winning teams. But the teams that he quarterbacked as the starter all year, he had injuries at the end. They were winning teams, but he was back and forth with Billy Kilmer, which is part of the story. But the 1 year in Washington that he had a winning record was 1969, when he finished 7-5-2. So on the 57th anniversary of Vince Lombardi being introduced as the Redskins coach, Sonny Jurgensen passes away, and Vince Lombardi sadly died at the age of 57 before Sonny could have a second year with him. And then we get to the George Allen years, which is even more what if. We'll do that in the next hour. But let's go back to Sonny and how he came up. He was from Wilmington, North Carolina, which I understand is a beach town. He talked about playing football on the beach a lot. His dad was a tough guy, drove trucks, and Sonny was a tremendous athlete. In fact, he told me that he was a better basketball player than he was a football player. His program height was 6 feet, so he was probably between 5'10" and 6 feet. But he was a terrific basketball player and could have played college basketball at North Carolina or any of the other top basketball schools at the time. Remember, Sonny was in college just before North Carolina won the national championship, 1957, when they beat Wilt Chamberlain in Kansas. So he theoretically, had he played basketball, he could have been a part of a NCAA championship team and maybe even played in the NBA. But he knew that football was going to be his ticket, and at less than 6 feet, that was the way he was going to have to go. But as he told Andy Ockershausen was the general manager of this station when it was a powerhouse many, many years ago. And he did, towards the end of his life, podcasts with people who were influential in Washington. He called it Our Town. And Sonny is one of his best friends. So, of course, he did one with Sonny, and it was about 10 years ago. And this is the story about how the Hall of Fame quarterback career almost never happened.
One time I came home from football. Practice was tough. Football was tough in those days. And I said, Dad, I think I'm going to quit football. And he said, yeah. And I said, I like basketball.
And you
better,
were very good at it.
And I think I can play basketball, and I would like to do that. And he said, well, you quit football, you quit eating here, too. So I said, okay, I'll play.
Sonny not only had great stories, he told them so well. So he winds up playing quarterback at Duke.
Duke Rooters come to life a few plays later when Jurgensen uncorks a bullseye beauty of a toss to Blaney, and the Blue Devil is in the clear for Duke's only touchdown. The local fans raise the roof.
Not only was that the only touchdown in the game, that was one of two touchdown passes that Sonny threw his entire senior year at Duke. 10 games, 2 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions, 28 completions on 59 attempts. So he averaged just over 5 passes a game. It was a different game in those days, obviously. Yet he becomes a fourth-round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles and goes on to this career. In the meantime, he's at Duke, and basketball. He still loves basketball, and he used to work out with the team. And this is how close he came to playing basketball as well as football at Duke, with an incredible name from the past mixed in.
I wanted to play basketball, and Bill Bradley was the basketball coach, and he wanted me to come out because I had played with some of these guys.
In high school, right?
In high school. And the reason he didn't, he sent somebody to ask me to come out. You know who that guy was? Lefty Giselle. And Lefty said, I didn't want you to come out. You'd take my place. And
That's a great story.
He cured me of it right away.
Well, I don't know, or Lefty didn't exactly follow the coach's orders. Yeah, because Sonny would say, if I was on that Duke basketball team, Lefty'd be watching and I would be playing. I think Lefty was like the sixth man. I don't know if he was a starter on that team, but Sonny could have played both sports. That was easier in those days too. Not easy, but it was a different schedule. Like the football season would wrap up in early November. Basketball season would start around Thanksgiving, and you were through unless you made it to the NCAA tournament in early March. Well, both seasons overlap, and you have off-season workouts, and the whole thing has changed. Probably Charlie Ward is the last guy to have really done it at that high a level at Florida State, and wound up with the Heisman Trophy playing basketball in the NBA. He had about a 10, 11-year career, mostly with the New York Knicks. Anyway, Sonny winds up in Philadelphia, and, he was not an overnight success. You look at Sam Darnold, got to look at Sonny. In his first year, his rookie year, he made 4 starts, but he completed only 47% of his passes, threw 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. The Eagles trade for Norm Van Brocklin in 1958, and Sonny doesn't play at all. He plays very little. He had 0 starts over a 3-year period, 58, 59, and 60. Van Brocklin leads the Eagles to the championship in 60, immediately retires after that, and goes on to coach the expansion Minnesota Vikings. That doesn't happen now. But in those days, you could go right from playing to being a head coach. Van Brocklin did that, and Sonny inherits the job for the 61 season, and he was spectacular. Here's a guy who's been riding the bench for 3 years. When he got his chance in his rookie year, was and he set an NFL record with 32 touchdown passes, led the league in completions and yards, and they actually had a good year. Just there weren't that many playoff teams there, and so in those days, I think in those days you just had a division. You didn't even have playoffs. You just played for the championship until the merger. So he has a bad year in 63. He's hurt, misses a bunch of games, and they trade him to the Washington Redskins. That he winds up. This is a crazy story. In that Sonny is thinking, okay, I had a rough year in 63, but I've already proven myself with the Eagles. And players didn't get traded that often in those days. And, it's in the division. Aren't they the least bit worried about Sonny, beating them when he's right down the road in Washington? But that wasn't the case. He met with the coach, and this is what happened on April 1st. Wasn't April Fool's Day for Sonny, but it was the real thing. It happened in 1964 on April Fool's Day.
It was. I was surprised because I had just talked with the new head coach of the Philadelphia team, was Joe Kaharick. And I had met with him, talked with him about what we were going to do and why we were going to win and how, and I was very excited about it,
A new beginning for you, right?
And I walk out of there at 13th and Locust and walk to 18th and Spruce, which was a day's delicatessen. And I go in, and some guys come in. I was meeting some friends there. Some guys come in and say, "Hey, I just see where you got traded." I said, "What? What are you talking about?" And I said, "I just met with the coach." I said, "I didn't get traded." And I said, "It was April Fool's Day." And I said, "It's April Fool's." That's the reason. And they said, "No, we just heard it on the radio."
You're gone.
So I go back around the 13th and Locust and run into the coach. And I said, "What is this? Traded?" He said, "Yep, we traded you. We got a good trade for Norm Snead, and we're going to let you go." And I said, "Gee, you got to be kidding me." And I was really shocked. But in the long run, it was the best thing that happened to me.
That's true.
Because it gave me an opportunity to start fresh again.
Yeah, and he comes into Washington to a team, you got to remember this, that they had only been integrated for 2 years. They integrated in 1962 with the great Bobby Mitchell, who went on to a Hall of Fame career. And he was one of like 2 or 3 black players on the roster in 62, 63, a few more added, but there's no free agency. You have to do it totally through the draft. In 64, okay, there was another great offensive weapon coming in as they drafted Charlie Taylor, who had a spectacular career. When he retired, was the number 1 receiver of all time. But it takes a while to rebuild when you've had a color line longer than any other team in professional sports. I think even hockey was integrated by then, and they did not have black players, so it was going to take some time. And in 1965, Edward Bennett Williams, who was then running the team, George Preston Marshall, who had that color line and famously said, and this was the correct term at the time, but he said, "I'll start signing Negro ball players when the Harlem Globetrotters start signing white players." Ha, 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 ha. And the joke was on him as they finished 1-12-1 in 1961. So they did integrate, and there's a long story about the Secretary of the Interior telling him he couldn't play a brand new D.C. stadium, which of course became RFK, until he integrated the team. And that's what they did in trading for Bobby Mitchell with the Cleveland Browns, trading the draft rights to Ernie Davis, who was the first African-American Heisman Trophy winner, who said he had no desire to play there. So it worked out very well for Washington, tragically for Cleveland, as Ernie Davis died of leukemia. So anyway, Sonny is pretty much what they got. You know, the defense is terrible. There's some guys who've become great players over the course of time, like Chris Hanburger. But, you know, again, you're for all these years, you held the line against some great talent. And, you know, what do you expect? So, you know, Sonny was going to have to beat you with offense. He wasn't going to, you know, run the ball and hope that the defense did a job. And so in 1965, with Otto Graham hired by Edward Bennett Williams, kind of the Steve Spurrier of his day, although he was a great player, as Spurrier was a journeyman player in the NFL. But Otto Graham came from the Coast Guard Academy. It wasn't even like Spurrier coaching major college football. This was minor college football. He comes into Washington. At EBW thought offense would be great, and with Sonny, okay, you know, the two of them could make magic, and at times they did.
Sonny Jurgensen, one of the foremost bombardiers in the NFL, led the Redskins to their most impressive victory against the Cowboys in D.C. Stadium. Behind 21-0 in the first half, Jurgensen faces the unenviable task of fighting an uphill battle. Charlie Taylor revitalizes the Redskins with this 38-yard reception. Jurgensen spears Taylor again between 2 Cowboys, and the streamlined back dives into the end zone to put the Redskins on the scoreboard.
And that may have been the game, because Sonny told this story as well. I don't have it on tape, but he told this story. We went out for the coin flip in a game against the Cowboys. He was the team captain, and I guess Don Meredith was the team captain for the Cowboys. And that's it, just 2. You didn't need, like they have now, 400 captains out on the field, and the ceremonial captains, all that. No, just 2 guys. And Meredith looks at Sonny, and he says, "What's your shoe size?" Sonny says, "What? And what's your shoe size?" Gives him the shoe size. few days later, at the training facility, a pair of cowboy boots shows up, courtesy of Don Meredith. So that was the Cowboy game, 1965. 67, you not only have Charlie Taylor, you not only have Bobby Mitchell, but they have drafted Jerry Smith, one of the great pass-catching tight ends, and there's a case to be made for him for the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he'll ever get there. Sadly, his distinction is the first known professional athlete to die of AIDS, but he was a great tight end, and so Sonny used them, and in 1967, he had the number 1 receiver in the NFL, Charlie Taylor, number 2, Jerry Smith, number 4, Bobby Mitchell. And that season, he led the league in completions, yardage, and touchdowns. He threw 31, but to tell you how bad the defense was, they finished 5-6-3. So finally, in 1969, Vince Lombardi is hired. Now, Vince Lombardi, when he was introduced at his news conference, as Tom Lavero writes in his column this week, he made a reference to Sonny but didn't name him. He said they have a great quarterback and great receivers. He didn't really understand how good Sonny was, even though he'd played against him and was familiar with his play. But when he got his first up-close look at him, he said to an assistant, he said, if we would have had Sonny in Green Bay, the league would have declared us a monopoly. And he almost had a monopoly in Green Bay with Bart Starr, where they won 5 championships, including the first 2 Super Bowls over 7 years. And Bart Starr's in the Hall of Fame. But Lombardi said that Sonny was the best he ever saw. And he even said early on, before you got to look at him, he said, Sonny's arm will fall off before we win a championship. Then he got to look and wasn't so sure. And they finished 7-5-2, which was, for that period of time for the team, remember, that's 69, so 7-8 years earlier, they're 1-12-1. Things change, and this is the big what if with Sonny and Lombardi. This is what Sonny said about playing for him.
I was desperate to have someone like Lombardi come in. He was the only coach that I played for that simplified the game of football.
Yeah, he just was in love with playing with Vince Lombardi. He said that was the best year of his career. 1969, he was in the conversation for the MVP. He led the league in pass attempts, completion, yardage, over 3,000, which is a big number in those days with 14 games, 22 touchdown passes, first team All-Pro, got votes for MVP, 7-5-2, their first winning season in 14 years. And at the end of that season, with hopes that this was going to be, because Sonny, would go on to play for another 5 years, that this might be the start of a push for a team that could win a championship. And this is what Sonny relayed to Andy Ockershausen about what happened after the 1969 season.
After the first year, I went into the office, and he was there. And he congratulated me on the first year under him. He said, you didn't even know the system. He said, but you completed 65% of your passes. You set some records. He said, I think now that you know the system, next year you'll complete 70% of your passes. Gee,
unheard of.
It was right. And he said, and I said, but look how many times I got sacked because you told me to hold on to the ball and then throw it. And I said, look how many times I got sacked. He said, yeah, but you knew the personnel better than I did. And laughed and walked out.
and not long after that, Lombardi was diagnosed with colon cancer. In those days, I don't believe they did colonoscopies. In fact, I'm having one tomorrow. But he was 57 years old and 56, I guess, when he was diagnosed. They took him to Georgetown University Hospital. There's now a wing of that, the Lombardi Cancer Center. And he deteriorated in there. They removed the colon, but it was too late. And Sonny recalled going in to see him when he was like 70 pounds. He said it was just awful. And the team, as a matter of fact, practiced on the Georgetown football field. So Lombardi could see the practice from his hospital room window. He just couldn't participate. Bill Austin took over. They had another losing season, 1970. And then 1971, George Allen arrives, and that becomes the second part of the career story of What If with Sonny Jurgensen. I'm going to do that next hour, but it's all a part of that picture of someone who had this unbelievable talent and just didn't line up properly with the support that he needed. And, to think that had he wound up with, a team as talented as the Packers, how many Super Bowls he would have won or how many championships he would have won. In fact, the Super Bowls didn't even come until like halfway through his career. But just to have that type of person there was and somebody who he believed in and the coach believed in him. It's amazing. In fact, Tom has this in his column about their first meeting, and he said, Jurgensen said, I sat down across from him, and he said, man, I've heard some good things and some bad things about you. I'm sure you've heard some good things and bad things about me. All I ask of you is to be yourself. I don't want you to try and emulate anyone else or try to be something you're not. We'll get along fine. If you do anything that reflects on the Redskins in a derogatory manner, I'll call you and talk about it privately. Any questions? That was it. Mutual respect. Lombardi told Jurgensen, I'm going to be tougher on you than anyone else because you're the leader of the team. And he was. He was hard on me, and that was good. It set an example for the rest of the players. If he is on him, how's he going to be with us? So everybody played hard for him. And as Jurgensen said, he said, I played for 9 different head coaches, but didn't get a chance to get on the field with all 9 because some were fired before they even got on the field. As he talked about Joe Kuharich, who booted him before he ever played a game for him. And Sonny said nobody was close to Lombardi. Nobody was close to him. And so that's the what if with him. There's a second chapter of what if with George Allen arrives in 1971, and we will get to that in the next hour. All right, coming up, we'll get to more on the game and also more remembrances of Sonny Jurgensen. Don't go away. Speaking of bored, that was not a great Super Bowl. Maybe one of the worst of all time. And it has people talking about other things, including the halftime show, which somehow or another is politicized from someone who's from Puerto Rico and didn't sing in English. Okay. And then there's pregame and postgame stuff to talk about as well. You usually don't get that a day later after the Super Bowl. You hope that people are talking about the excitement of the game. Well, that wasn't the case yesterday. And hats off to Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth for keeping it as interesting as it was, given the dullness on the field. We'll get to that, plus more on the life and times of Sonny Jurgensen, who passed away on Friday. The news breaking here just before we wrapped up the show, so I only had a few minutes to spend on him, but a lot of time to reflect over the weekend, read things, thought about things, and the great career that he had both on the field with the team for 11 years, followed by a broadcasting career that lasted almost 40 years. Just really an amazing person and a really good person. Someone who never big-timed anybody and knew how to be a star, too, at the same time. Wasn't falsely modest. Just had this great swagger about him with the cigar and, just the living legend that he was. And for someone who didn't win, it's to pull that off nowadays. Oh, how many rings did he win? How great could he be? That didn't happen here, but there were circumstances that prevented it. And we spent some time on the tragedy of Vince Lombardi, who was going to take this team maybe to where he took the Packers, or at least close to it, and do it with Sonny. And never happened because they only were together for 1 year. And then Lombardi passed away of cancer at the age of 57. So back to the game. I want to talk about John Schneider for a minute here. Let's do that first. John Schneider was the general manager per se. I mean, Marty Schottenheimer was in control of everything. But let's go back in time. And this goes back to when before we realized that my God, what a disaster Dan Snyder is as the owner. He takes over the team late in 1999. I say late because it was only a couple of months before training camp started. The draft had already taken place. There was little that he could do to mess things up. So Charlie Casserly had done a really good job trading the pick to Mike Ditka for his entire draft so he could take Ricky Williams, and he flipped a couple of things around. He finally had a quarterback in Brad Johnson, and he had a team that was good enough. They won the division that year. Weren't a great team, but did get to the playoffs, and there was reason to believe, okay, with the draft and with the people that they had brought in, that they were ready to contend again, because you had the post Super Bowl years where you had the salary cap coming in. The team was old. Joe Gibbs retires. It doesn't work out in the 1 year that Richie Pettibone coached. And then you bring in Norv Turner. He has a few rebuilding years, a couple of disappointing years. And now, finally, 1999, they win. And then Danny starts to screw things up. He's got money under the cap. He signs all these big-name free agents who are over the hill, some of them, like Deion Sanders at that point. Brings in Bruce Smith, the cancerous Jeff George, and they finish 8-8. And so, okay, finally in 2001, he's going to do what people are telling him to do. Hire a football guy. So he hires Marty Schottenheimer. Marty Schottenheimer comes in and he says to Dan Snyder, he says, okay, he says, I'm going to run your team, but I got the final say on everything. He said, you can have your input, but when it comes down to what we're going to do, it's going to be my way. I'm going to tell you how to do it. And he went, okay, not realizing what was involved in that. And when they started 0-5, that's when Snyder started scooping around and see what he could do to get Steve Spurrier here, which happened, and he fired him a year later. But as part of the Marty Schottenheimer arrival here was that he said that he had to run personnel. The player personnel guy was Vinny Serrato, Danny's boy. And Vinny was asked about Marty. And Vinny goes, oh, yeah, Marty and I go way back. He says, yeah, well, great, Marty's coming in. Marty was asked about Vinny. Marty said, I met him once, I think. And then he fired him, and he brings in John Schneider. And, yes, they had the bad start, but it looked like, okay, they were going to build. Things were going to turn around. They went from 0-5 to 5-5. They were in the playoff hunt. They finished 8-8 with Tony Banks and one audible. For God's sakes, look at what they could have done if Marty stays. Well, thrown out along with Marty is John Schneider, who had the right kind of training to get there. He had been a scout with Green Bay. Green Bay 93-96. What happened in 96? Green Bay won the Super Bowl. He goes to Kansas City 97 and 99. He goes to Seattle in 2000. Comes here in 2001. Gets fired. Goes back to Green Bay for 8 or 9 years. Goes back to Seattle in 2010. And since then, he has produced 3 Super Bowl teams, 2 of them winning championships. I mean, again, a what if? What if? And what happened after Schneider got fired here? Why? Danny brought Vinny back. And how did that work out? Not too good. So here's Schneider as part of the post-game celebration on the NFL Network with what he's been able to accomplish since going to Seattle 16 years ago.
Honestly, since 2010, Pete Carroll and I came in the building, and it's just been an aggressive approach on a daily basis. Nothing's really changed philosophically that way. So, you're constantly every day making these decisions on how to improve your football team, how to improve the organization, and that could be in sports science, analytics, the equipment room, whatever. And then obviously, with the players, working free agency, working the draft, waiver claims, practice squads, all that, and it really has never changed. It's been just new people and the grit, competitiveness, everything we're looking for in the people. And I think that's more important than, the athlete, the speed, and all that sort of stuff.
John, what about your quarterback, man, Sam Darnold, man? Like, I mean, I ain't going to say revenge tour or whatever, man, but, like, he won a championship, man, after teams thought that he couldn't do it. What made Sam Darnold the right quarterback for this organization?
Again, the resilience, the leader. We had those 2 games last year that everybody kept talking about, and I mean, you could pick any game apart, really. And God helps those who can't help themselves, and Sam came into our world at the right time, and he's just obviously he's the third pick of the draft. You know what I mean? Like, the guy's got talent, and so in my opinion, we all need to be more patient with quarterbacks. And we used to have NFL Europe.
Yeah.
And the Kurt Warners and I go on Brad Johnson. All these guys, Mark Bolger. You go on and on and on. And we don't really do that anymore. And those guys have a hard. Those guys, you guys know. It's a hard gig. I sit in some of those meetings. I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
Exactly, right?
It's like a different language.
It's a great point about the loss of NFL Europe. Guys could find themselves there like Kurt Warner did. Trent Green, who had really good success when he went to Kansas City. He played well when he finally got the opportunity here. That got him to the Rams. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL in a preseason game. Kurt Warner steps in. He had also been able to, find his way in NFL Europe. So the training ground isn't there. And how many others got lost in the shuffle because there was this great rush to play him? Well, after going through 4 different teams, certainly Sam Darnold has found a home with Seattle at a very good price. They were able to get him for like $33 million a year. That's not to say, he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but you find one that way, and I think that's important. A couple of other things, also pre- and post-game. This, again, is post-game, and usually they're fluffy, especially after Super Bowl. How does it feel to win one? Clint Kubiak, who really makes me feel old because I saw his dad play in high school, and he went on to a career in the NFL as a backup to John Elway and eventually became a coach and coached the Broncos to a Super Bowl championship and all that. This is his son. So I saw the dad in high school. The son is now going to become coach of the Raiders. We've kind of known that, but it hasn't been officially announced by the team. And Stacey Dales, who started out here in Washington as a player on the Mystics. She was a pretty good player. And she transitioned to becoming a broadcaster with the NFL Network. And she had the on-field interview with Clint Kubiak and got him, this doesn't usually happen this way, got him to break the news.
How tricky has it been, Clint, to manage all the head coaching interviews that you've had to do over the last few weeks?
Yeah, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't. But I'm really grateful to have the opportunity. And I know that I didn't get to talk to any of those teams without Coach McDonald showing me how to do it. So I have a lot of admiration for him and for John and this roster that they built.
How will you decide what you're going to do next? What are the next steps?
Yeah, I'm just going to enjoy my family, enjoy Sawyer and Tessa, Lane, Case, and Will, and we're going to enjoy being Seahawks tonight.
What does the future look like as a head coach in this league for you? Because it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's up to God, and we're going to enjoy tonight. Yeah.
So no answers on the network.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, you guys know I'm going to Las Vegas, so I'm fired up about it. But tonight, one more for one more night. Hell yeah, I'm going. Of course I'm going. Yeah.
Just confirmed it right here. New coach of the Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congratulations. Enjoy this one.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All
right, Stacey. Well done. Well done. She could have come at him with both guns. Hey, the rumors are out there. Now that the Super Bowl's over, are you going to the Raiders? And he might have said, well, there's some talks, and let's let the team announce it. She kind of got it out of him. Good job. Other thing, this is pregame, not postgame, and the big fuss last week was, oh my God, Bill Belichick didn't get in the Hall of Fame, and people are still angry about that. Though he didn't help himself, I'll tell you, showing up at the Super Bowl with his girlfriend wearing a T-shirt that was in reference to Bob Kraft getting caught in a sting with a massage parlor. That was not a good look. But he was a sympathetic figure for a while, not getting in. And so Tony Dungy is one of the voters. He still hasn't revealed whether he voted for Belichick or not. Sounds like he didn't. But good for Rodney Harrison. And both are paid by the same people. These pregame things are not like this. And this is not what they're supposed to be about. But this was really good as Rodney Harrison came at Tony Dungy with a strong opinion on Dungy and the other voters not putting Belichick in.
What I would say, Coach, is any list that doesn't include Bill Belichick at the top is absolutely wrong. And a lot of those players that we mentioned, they're great players. I played with Drew Brees. I played with Adam Vinatieri. But there's nobody more deserving to be in that Hall of Fame than Coach Belichick. I've seen his greatness. I've seen him design defenses to stop your offense. And you just look at the players that he's impacted. He's been unbelievable. And when I look out throughout the Hall of Fame, and even a guy like Tom Brady wouldn't be Tom Brady without Bill Belichick. And that's the disappointing part of it, Coach, and you guys got it wrong.
You guys got it wrong. And then, you got a little bit of like, okay, whatever. So hopefully they fix the system. And this is one thing Dungy said, and he's 100% right. You can't just throw the coaching or an owner category finalist for the Hall of Fame, where you had Kraft and Belichick, in the same group as three players who were left over for the seniors committee, and Roger Craig was the only one to get in. It just too many different places to consider. You only have 3 votes for 5 people. Limit one to players and one to other contributors, and I think they're probably going to take care of that next year. Last thing here on the Super Bowl. And, I'm sure there's a number of storylines in this that I'm missing here, but this is one more that I want to hit. And if you saw the movie North Dallas 40, now North Dallas 40 came out, 47 years ago? Whew, wow, 1979. I think it is the best movie representing pro football that there is. It's fictional. It's based on the Dallas Cowboys. It's based on the Pete Gent book, North Dallas 40. Pete Gent was a player with the Dallas Cowboys and kind of took you inside the ugly side of the game. But John Matuzak, who was an outstanding defensive player, played most of his career with the Raiders, won a Super Bowl with them. He's playing someone who's essentially himself in the movie, a big, angry defensive lineman, and famous in the movie for saying this.
Every time I called a game, you called a business. And every time I called a business, you called a game.
Yeah, I mean, let's hear that again.
Every time I called a game, you called a business. And every time I called a business, you called a game.
Yeah, and that's what the movie's about. Take the shot. The dirty underbelly of professional football. Take the greenies to get up. All those things that you didn't talk about that happened, and players would tell you that they happened. As a matter of fact, but this was Mike Macdonald, the coach of the Seattle Seahawks, and a great story. Guy who worked his way up, started as an intern in the NFL with the Baltimore Ravens, worked himself up to become a coordinator on the staff with the Ravens, and then got his opportunity in Seattle. And, with all the schmoopy stuff after the game, said this.
We're in the business of winning football games. And to win football games, you got to be a great team. And great teams have people from all over the place that come together. That's why football is so special. I mean, you look at that locker room and what people have gone through to get to this point in their career on this particular team. It's a beautiful thing, man. It's really, really powerful, really awesome.
Yeah, and Drake May, who admitted after the game that they'd shot up his shoulder. This probably should have been a bigger storyline during the week. He's telling everybody, oh, yeah, feels fine, should be ready to go. He'd been limited in practice. Well, he said that he took a pain-killing injection for his shoulder, and he said, I shot it up, not much feeling. It was good to go, and it felt okay. But he turned the ball over 3 times. Didn't look right? I mean, he was under pressure all day. But his QBR, which was introduced 20 years ago, there have been 61 instances of a quarterback making at least 3 starts in a single postseason. His QBR for the 4 that he played, because remember they played 3 playoff games to get there, and he was sacked 5 times in each of the 3 before, and then sacked 6 times yesterday. It's down there with Peyton Manning, who in his last year, 2015, was pretty much playing with one arm. They won that Super Bowl because of defense. It was not because of Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning won that game with his brain because he couldn't throw anymore. 2006, well, what do you expect? Rex Grossman, his QBR was 30.5, and then yesterday Drake May 40. So it was the 3rd worst of all time since they introduced the QBR. He was that bad, and said, about
this being a game, also being a business.
It's a business at this level, but it's more than that. It's more than that. In a game like this, and yeah, I think that's about it. It's more than a business. There's people in there that are doing it, not for the money or the fame, and that's what's cool about this team.
So, a little teary-eyed, emotional. Mike Vrabel played on 3 Super Bowl winners with the Patriots, did a remarkable job of bringing them back, but now that you've raised the bar and the Patriot fans say, okay, here comes our next dynasty, he knows what the pressure is going to be like heading into next season.
Every year, unfortunately, somebody loses this game, and we can't take it out on the people that love us the most. And I try to tell them they got to find a place to get with those people tonight and thank them and hug them, because they'll be the ones that are there when you lose to the Steelers and you lose to the Bills and you lose to the Raiders and you lose the Super Bowl. They're gonna be the ones that love you no matter what. And I think we have a bunch of great guys, and I'm sure this will bother them for a while, and then we'll have to get back to work.
Well, we'll see what happens going forward. There are teams that pop up like this and never return, like the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow may be the best quarterback in the league, hasn't been back since he lost one to the Rams. And Mike Vrabel may get back there, and he may mirror some of the great coaches of all time, like Tom Landry, who lost, I think, 2 before he won one. Don Shula lost 1 before he went on to win 2 straight, including an undefeated season. Maybe he gets back there, maybe he doesn't, and maybe Drake May never plays in one again. And we'll see what kind of a career he has. I think the greatest example would be Dan Marino, who's in the discussion as the greatest to ever play the game, got to 1 Super Bowl, never got back again. So while we look at this rising team with this great quarterback from the class that Jaden Daniels was in 2024, he had a rough postseason, and his team looked overmatched yesterday by the defense. And, now that he's on the radar, let's see what happens next year. As Adam Peters even said this after that miraculous year of 2024, hey, every year is different. We start fresh, and everybody starts over for 2026 right now, because the Combine is coming up shortly. All right, coming up, we'll talk more about the life of Sonny Jurgensen with more remembrances moving towards the second half of his NFL career, where he and George Allen did not get along.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Besides the death of Sonny Jurgensen on Friday, we had 2 other NFL deaths of people with notable lives. I mean, these are really amazing stories, the 2 of them, one of them being Barry Wilburn, who died in a house fire over the weekend in Tennessee. And, he's one of the stars of that Super Bowl team where Doug Williams was, of course, the MVP with the 4 touchdown passes. But defense did a number on the Broncos as well in a complete blowout, 42-10. And Barry Wilburn had 2 interceptions of John Elway in that game. He also had a 100-yard interception earlier that year. It's obviously be the longest interception, pick 6 in Washington history. 8th round pick. They don't even have 8 rounds anymore. 1985. 5 years with Washington. Really good player. All-Pro 1 year. 9 interceptions, which led the league. And then he failed a drug test. He was found with cocaine, and they released him after the 1989 season. He went to play in Canada. He resurfaced briefly with the Cleveland Browns in 1992, then disappeared again. I mean, this is like, you don't usually see stories like this, but he makes his way back, makes the Philadelphia Eagles as a starter in 1995 on a playoff team, plays 1 more year in Philadelphia, then finishes up with a Canadian team. I mean, he was in and out of the league and managed to put together an 8 or 9 year career playing in the NFL. 246 tackles, 20 interceptions. Just remarkable. 62 years old. I don't know all the details of that, but there was a house fire early on Saturday morning, and he was found dead in the house. And then Ray Hanley passed away He was 81 years old, and Ray Handley is one of the most curious coaching stories that anyone has ever seen. Handley was a running back at Stanford, and he transitions from playing to joining the Army staff. And on the Army staff, he meets up with a young Bill Parcells. And they kind of go as a package. Parcells goes, I think he was the head coach at Air Force, and Handley was with him. And then it comes to the Giants in 1984 when Parcells is the head coach, stays as the running backs coach through the 1990 season, which was the year that Parcells won his second Super Bowl. And the story was that he was conflicting with general manager George Young. These things happen. It happened here with Bobby Beathard and Joe Gibbs, and Gibbs won that battle, and Beathard left. In this case, it was Parcells losing the battle with George Young, so he left. And Ray Handley was promoted to head coach. And he coached for 2 years, and he wasn't a good head coach. There's no question about that. And he they totally messed things up with Phil Simms and Jeff Hostetler. And when he got fired after the second year, it was time for him to go. However, and who knows what's substantiated and what's not true. Apparently there was a DUI, and according to the rumors, he was cross-dressing. I don't know if that's the case, but that was a rumor. But he left the NFL and pretty much dropped off the face of the earth. You know, a guy who becomes a head coach in the NFL, if it doesn't work out, and he's had a background like he'd been coaching at that point for 20 years or whatever, 25 years, you're going to get another opportunity. You can make good money. No, he left. Never heard from him again. Somebody found a number for him, an unlisted number. A reporter wanted to do a "Where Are They Now?" and got mad and hung up the phone and was never heard from again. Ray Handley has not been heard from since his last season, which would have been, 1993? 1992. That's amazing. But that is someday somebody will dig up something on that. But rest in peace, Ray Handley, passing away at the age of 81, and Barry Wilburn tragically dying in a house fire at the age of 62. Sonny Jurgensen, there's just so many stories about him. I spent a part of the last hour talking about his transition from being a Duke quarterback, where he threw 59 total passes in his senior year, only 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, yet was a 4th-round pick of the Eagles and went on to become a Hall of Fame quarterback. Just the way the game was played differently in those days. But when he was in Philadelphia, and he was such a good athlete, he could have played college basketball at the highest levels from North Carolina. Tar Heels wanted him, a bunch of other schools. But he's under 6 feet, so he goes to play football at Duke. But in the off-season, and this was very common in those days, teams of football players would get together and be like traveling basketball teams. Sometimes they'd play high school faculties, and sometimes they would play other teams of off-season football players, and they get some money for it. So in the Wilt Chamberlain game, March 8th of 1962, at the Hershey Arena, there were 6,000 people there who saw Wilt Chamberlain score 100 points against the Knicks. And as Sonny told Andy Ockershausen about 10 years ago, he was one of the 6,000.
In Philadelphia, we had a basketball team. Pretty good basketball players. Timmy Brown,
good player,
Tommy McDonald, Clarence Peaks. Yeah. We had some good players on there. And one night, we were playing in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And in Hershey, we played preliminary games to the Philadelphia Warriors. So they were playing the second game against the New York Knicks. We played the first game and came back out and sat down and watched.
Who was your opponent in the first game?
Baltimore Colts.
The Baltimore Colts basketball team, of course.
Right. And
Gino,
Pellington, oh yeah. But we came out and watched the second game, and that was the night Wilt Chamberlain got 100 points, and we got to see it.
And many, many others said they did and didn't, but Sonny Jurgensen happened to be there the night that Wilt scored 100. So He winds up in Washington, 1964, stunning thing. He goes to see his new coach, Joe Kuharich, talking about the 64 season, goes to have lunch in a deli. It happens to be April 1st, so he thinks somebody's playing a joke on him. They're not. He's told he's been traded to the Washington Redskins, and he's joining a team that is terrible defensively, but Sonny is terrific offensively, and he's putting up, 4 or 5 touchdowns in a game and losing. And, like I gave for an example, 1967 had the number 1, number 2, and number 4 receiver in the league, threw 31 touchdown passes, and the team's record was 5-6-3. He just couldn't get together defense. So George Allen arrives in 1971, and George Allen says the future is now, and George Allen is a defensive guy. He made his bones as the defensive coordinator on the 1963 Chicago Bears. That got him to the Rams. With the Rams, he had great defensive teams, and he comes to Washington, and there was no free agency, but there was draft picks, and George didn't like rookies. So he traded his draft picks for a number of his veterans, one of them outstanding, Dyron Talbert, Jack Pardee, Richie Pettibone came here. They were great veteran defensive players. So Sonny finally had a defense to go with an offense that included Charlie Taylor and Jerry Smith, and they had Larry Brown, who was a terrific running back. And in the preseason, in George Allen's first year, Sonny throws an interception against the Miami Dolphins, should have known better, but attempts to make a tackle during a preseason game, breaks his left shoulder, non-throwing shoulder, but it puts him out for most of the year. Billy Kilmer comes in, and with the team that was built with Larry Brown and weapons like Charlie Taylor, though Taylor got hurt about a third of the way into the season, they had enough. They were winning close, defensive games, 14-10, stuff like that. And he got him to the playoffs for the first time in like 25 years. And so 1972, Sonny comes back. Billy's the starter at the beginning of the year, but he has a couple of rough games, and they put in Sonny. And so we've had the what-if year of 71, which some say was a better team than the 72 team because the older guys were younger. And had they had Sonny, who knows what they would have done. They might have made the Super Bowl that 71 season. But because Sonny was not Sonny that year, and Billy couldn't quite get him past the 49ers in the playoffs, comes to 72. He reclaims the job, and then as John Facenda recounted, it all comes apart in a midseason game in New York. The Giants still playing on the grass at Yankee Stadium.
Hardship was never part of Sonny Jurgensen's life until 1972. When it consumed his career and shattered his dreams. In his 9 years as a Redskin, Jurgensen set passing records that may never be matched. But what he wanted more than anything else was a championship. In the beginning of the season, he led Washington to 3 crucial victories, including a thrilling come-from-behind win over the Dallas Cowboys. But against the New York Giants, he tore his Achilles tendon and spent the rest of the year on crutches. Although he never realized his dream, he was still very much a part of the championship season. He instilled confidence in the offense and left with each man a renewed faith in the team.
Yeah, and an unusual backup situation in that his best friend on the team was Billy Kilmer, his backup. And you don't usually hear backups talking this way, but, Billy Kilmer was broken up about this. Yes, this was another opportunity, and he wound up taking the team to the Super Bowl, but this was, at the time, Kilmer stepping in for Jurgensen once again.
Billy Kilmer repeats as the Redskin quarterback. Kilmer took over the signal-calling role after Sonny Jurgensen was injured last Sunday. Kilmer has mixed emotions about subbing for Jurgensen.
He was having a fine year, and he worked awful hard all through training camp, and maybe I was closer than most people because I'd see him in meetings and things, and he really worked real hard. Wanted to have a championship year, and he was playing at championship caliber, and I know how he feels.
Yeah, so, Kilmer did a great job, and in the NFC Championship game against Dallas, he was as good as you would hope Sonny would be. If you see the highlights, the touchdown pass that he threw to Charlie Taylor was perfect. Billy threw a wobbly ball. And Sonny once explained this. He said he didn't have the ability to spread his fingers out that far. So, if you look at your hand and you try and stretch your fingers as far apart as you can, Billy, for whatever reason, didn't have a hand that operated that way. So it was like a smaller hand throwing the football. And that contributed to the wobbliness, except for some reason on that play, it was just absolutely spectacular. They blew out Dallas, and they get to the Super Bowl. And this is the part of the story here with Sonny butting heads with George Allen. In those days, quarterbacks called their own plays. And Sonny liked to throw the football, and he was a smart guy. He could go to the line of scrimmage, much like Peyton Manning and some of the greats that we've seen in recent years, and diagnose what the defense was doing and call an audible and throw a pass. And one time he did that when Allen wanted him to run the ball, and he got mad at him, took him out of the game after throwing a touchdown pass. And that hatred for one another spilled over into that Super Bowl 7, where they met the undefeated Miami Dolphins and were actually favored by a point going into that game. Can you imagine that? Dolphins hadn't lost a game all year. Washington had 3 losses, and they go into the game as favorites to beat the Dolphins. But Sonny was unavailable to play. And I guess through the rest of his life, he carried this kind of bitterness with him.
George Allen didn't want me to be on the bench. I was on crutches. I'll never forget standing on the sidelines.
The Coliseum, right?
Los Angeles. The Coliseum. And I walked by, they were playing the Miami Dolphins, and I walked by Don Shula was standing there.
The coach of the Miami Dolphins.
The Miami Dolphins coach. And he said, "Sonny, I'm sorry you're not going to play in this game." He said, "It would be a better game if you could be in it." He said, "But I know how hard you worked to get here." And I said, "Nope, can't do it." So they put me up in a booth.
I remember that way up in the bow, way up top.
It was Jack Kent Cook's box.
He didn't want any distractions, right, George?
That's right. And I could have helped Billy. I really could have.
Well, Billy, the game plan for the Dolphins was to stop Larry Brown, which they did, and dare Billy Kilmer to beat him with his arm, and he couldn't do it. In fact, in those days, the goalposts were up against the goal line, and a couple of times he had receivers. I remember seeing one particular with Jerry Smith open in the end zone, and Kilmer hit the upright. And Sonny was a picture-perfect passer. He was Greg Maddux with a fastball. He could put it exactly where he wanted to put it, and he had a great arm, spectacular arm. In fact, he could throw it 30 yards behind his back. You can find those on YouTube as well. I saw it in a passing exhibition that he put on when I was at the University of Maryland football camp. Anyway, the 72 Super Bowl year, which they lost, segues to 1973. And then we have a real live quarterback controversy because you have Billy, who has taken the team to the playoffs in 71 when they lost in the first round at San Francisco. And then Sonny taking over in 72, reclaiming the job that was rightfully his. He was the best quarterback on the team. Getting hurt, Billy takes the team to the Super Bowl. And now the fans are looking at, the guy who's led us to success, which we hadn't seen in 20 years and 25 years. And then the great quarterback who, unfortunately, was part of losing teams and hasn't managed to stay healthy. And as it turned out, Billy had some injury problems in 73 as well, and also some performances where he got benched. So you had the biggest quarterback controversy we've ever seen in this town. We've had others, but not at this level. This took over. This was like a high school. Who do you like better? And so a friend of mine who actually became the mayor of Rockville at one point, Steve Van Grack, and his brother Jeff, came up with the idea for bumper stickers. And you couldn't get marketing rights for Redskins. So if you see these stickers, and I have 2 of them in my house, they say, "I root for Washington." They don't say, "I root for the Redskins." I root for Washington, and I like Billy. And there was another one that said, "I root for Washington, and I like Sonny." And people put them on their cars, leading to this great story that Sonny told Andy O.
When Billy and I would go out in my car or in his car, whenever we would see a bumper sticker, if it said, "I like Billy," I would give him the bird. And if it said, "I like Sonny," he would give him the bird. So we'd flip them off and keep going. And they'd say, "That was Jurgensen and Kilmer together there."
Can you imagine that? I don't think my family had one of those bumper stickers, but now that I hear that story, I wish we did, so that wouldn't it have been an honor to get the finger from, and we would have had an "I like Sonny" bumper sticker on our car. I guarantee you that. To get the finger from Billy Kilmer. That's funny. Last chapter, Sonny wanted to play one more year in 1974 or 70 after the 74 season. Wanted to come back for one more year, even though he was 40 years old. He wanted to play another season. He had led the league in passing percentage. I mean, he still had it. And he beat the Dolphins that year, too. The Dolphins, who had beaten the Redskins 2 years before. That was the revenge game. He beat them. And he wanted to play another year, but Allen said, "Nah, it's time," And so Sonny didn't want to go to another team, and so that was it. He left. He was sort of cut, and he winds up on network television. Did very well for about 5 years. Was not renewed by CBS after 1980. There was some talk that they were going to put him in the booth with Tom Brookshire and Pat Summerall. That was the duo, Summerall and Brookshire, before Madden replaced Brookshire, and they're going to have a three-man booth. But that never materialized. Comes back. Andy Ockershausen, his friend, says, "Well, we got Sam Huff and we got Frank Herzog doing the games on the radio. I want to add you to the booth." And it was the perfect storm. You had the great chemistry between Sonny and Sam. They were old friends. They both had come to Washington at the same time. Sonny had been the offensive captain. Sam had been the defensive captain. Both are in the Hall of Fame. And then the great broadcaster that Frank was and still is. He's been retired for a while. And so that was they were the soundtrack of that great era of 4 Super Bowls, and 3 of them they won over a 9-year period. And Sonny, was a terrific broadcaster, not just doing games because of his insight, but also did a lot of television. And as they were preparing for a playoff game in Chicago, which actually turned out to be Jimmy the Greek's last work with CBS before he was fired a week later for saying awful things about blacks in an interview from a Channel 4 reporter in Duke Ziebert's. This was a pregame show where Sonny was talking to Jimmy the Greek and Brent about the Redskins' prospects in what turned out to be an amazing playoff game with Darryl Green returning a punt for a touchdown, and that propelled them to the NFC Championship game.
For Washington, Joe Gibbs has turned it over to Doug Williams today. Now, a man who is familiar with past quarterback controversies in Washington, Sonny Jurgensen. He's with Jimmy the Greek. Let's go to the Greek.
Hey, Brent, I got Sonny, Hall of Famer. He's had a few controversies in quarterbacks. Tell us about the one in Washington, Sonny.
Jimmy, I really don't think there's a controversy there as far as Doug Williams and Jay Schrader. It was just a matter of Coach Gibbs and the staff getting some production from the quarterback position. Jay wasn't doing it. He was in a slump. They put in Doug Williams, and he performed. He brought him back against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, but Williams is 0-2 starting and 3-0 coming in.
There's a little different pressure on you when you're a starter. There's a lot of responsibility as far as leading the team. Coming off the bench is no pressure. You're only getting in the game because the guy that was playing poorly.
Well, that's my question, because there's some talks of Williams being a little bit on the choke side.
Well, I wouldn't suggest that in any way. I think that today he's got to make the plays. If he doesn't play well today, look for Joe Gibbs to go back to Schrader. I like the Redskins. I think if they can get the matchups in the secondary against their little receivers, they can win this football game.
Okay, Brent, you got it.
And they did win, and 2 things on that. One, Jimmy the Greek saying about an African-American quarterback who became the first African-American quarterback to start and win a Super Bowl. People are saying, which is a chicken bleep way of saying what you really feel, people say he's on the choke side. Yeah, right. And Sonny, rightly so, deflected that. And the other thing is they asked him for a prediction. Well, Sonny did the George Michael show, and he did part of the newscast for years on Channel 9 with Glenn Brenner and later with George Michael. And he rarely picked against the Redskins, even when they were terrible. People have, Frank Herzog, I think, incorrectly recalled this in a couple of the interviews I heard him do in the wake of Sonny's death on Friday. He said Sonny never, ever picked against the Redskins. That's not true. He didn't like Marty. And so a couple of times when they got off to that 0-5 start, he did pick against him. People went, oh, Sonny! And Sonny said that the reason he didn't pick against him was, people would be all over him. What are you doing? He knew how to be a legend. That was a big part of the picture, and he knew what the fan base expected of him. And he delivered. He was great on the radio for almost 40 years. He was great on the football field. And, boy, will he be missed. What a void. He's been off the air, retired for a number of years, but it's always been good to know that Sonny had been living down in Florida the last 6 or 7 years with his family and an expanding family. He's now a great-grandfather. And, boy, the memories that he left us with, particularly me, going back to when I first saw him play 60 years ago, just incredible. A wonderful guy, an incredible player, an incredible broadcaster, father, husband, the whole deal. Rest in peace, Sonny Jurgensen. Coming up, where does Seattle's defense rank all time after their shutdown performance yesterday in Super Bowl 6?
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Quickly, before I get to what Jared Bell in USA Today wrote about the Seahawks defense, Maryland played a basketball game yesterday at Minnesota, and they won. It's only their second conference win, their first road win of the year. What did Buzz Williams, the coach, say about it? We don't know. He said he didn't have anything to say to the media because, he didn't say it specifically, but I bet it is because I think he's in solidarity with this. With the Post canceling the sports section, there's nobody covering the team anymore. There's nobody on the road with the team. Now, that hasn't been the case for a while. They didn't send Gene Wong, but there's no place to put it in the paper, and the AP does it with a AI service. I mean, it's getting to that point. There aren't people to cover sporting events anymore, and nobody put up a fuss that Buzz didn't talk to the media because there's no reporters there who are interested in talking to him. And now, this is a plug for my friend Mark Zuckerman, who has been great at covering the Nats since they came here. He did it for the Washington Times. He tried to do it on his own for a little while, but then got hired, I believe, by Masson, and he was let go by Masson when they elected to take their rights to what is going to be run by ESPN. But he's putting out Nats Journal. He's going. Do you believe pitchers and catchers report tomorrow? Yes, they do. So Mark is going there. And he's starting his own thing. It's called Nats Journal, and you can subscribe to it for $7.99 a month or for a full year, $5.99 a month. So look that up, Mark Zuckerman, Nats Journal, and with the inability to get news, there's no beat writer. How many years has the beat writer covered Washington baseball? Minus the 33 years we didn't have a team, going back probably to the early part of the 20th century. Shirley Povich was covering them in the 1920s. So there's that. And as far as this defense, the dark side, pretty amazing that the two Super Bowls were both defensive-based. You had the Legion of Boom. Now you have the dark side. And Jared Bell says you can make a case that they're right there. You think of the great defenses, Doomsday with Dallas, the Steel Curtain. For me, it's the 85 Bears. Maybe there's some romanticism in that with all the characters that they had on the team. Some say the Ravens team that did to the Giants in 2001, 25 years ago in Tampa, pretty much what Seattle did yesterday to New England would be there. Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Warren Sapp. And they blew out the Raiders in a Super Bowl in San Diego, 2002, 2003? Wow. So this is an interesting debate, and you might put the 2025 Seattle Seahawks in that debate and what they were able to do in winning the second Super Bowl for that team. Remarkable stuff. Okay, that busy show today. All shows are busy, but information that I didn't want to give on the death of Sonny Jurgensen, and a Super Bowl that always gets a big wrap-up on Monday. I'm headed off for a colonoscopy tomorrow. Wish me luck. I'll be back here on Wednesday. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you Wednesday morning at 9.